I know a secret about monomyths. If you know what a monomyth is, you know how to engage with a monomyth. You know that it's not simply an outward-looking story, but that it is somehow built on a template that is a mentally interactive template. You would find that a monomyth is a road to enlightenment. What is a monomyth? This is a tricky one. I'm going to tell you right now, you know monomyths. You don't know that they're monomyths. You already know stories that are monomyths. They're made on a specific template, but you don't know that they're monomyths. There are so many from antiquity. Do you know the story of Jesus? Monomyth. Do you know the story of Noah? Monomyth. Moses? Monomyth. Jason from the Argonautica fame? Monomyth. It's going to go on and on and on. Monomyths are Ezekiel. The Bible is not complete monomyth, but every time you have a prophet and a calling, there's going to be a monomyth that ensues. Now, the difficult thing is understanding what a monomyth is. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. I can tell you that it takes a while to understand it, that we all know monomyths, and we very much connect with the story of a monomyth. It feels like we are part of the story. There's a reason for that. The monomyth is built on a template that frames the life experiences of a human. However, if you don't use the monomyth, if you don't understand what it is and find that mono template, what you have instead is an adventure or a religion that's going to give you some sort of mental guidance or entertainment in life. What I'm going to have to do is parallel with what is already known. Joseph Campbell's work. This book was published first in 1949, and it's called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Why would that be? Joseph Campbell identified a template in looking at myths globally. He just studied myths, and he began to detect patterns in there. If you read enough of them, you'll see the patterns. The fewer you read, you don't see the patterns. The more you read, the more you see the patterns. So the biggest reason people can't see them is that they just don't. Life is too busy today. People read one or two things, they let it go and move on. Or like in the cases of religions, they want you to stay ignorant. They tell you, do not read other things. Don't, it's sinful and all that kind of stuff. So in their world, education is a sinful thing. Yeah, the more you know, the worse it is. Why the hell is that? If you saw enough of these stories, you would see things like, well, here's Moses at this stage early on going through the Red Sea. Here is Jason the earlier stages right after leaving the past behind, going through the clashing rocks. Here is somebody that is in a void place in a story that is by a river that must cross the river and spend time in a void. That you start looking at something and going, you know what, there's like this water crossing. Jesus baptized and then 40 days in the wilderness. Moses through the Red Sea, 40 years in the desert. Do you see the correlation there? The 40, the desert, the wilderness, devoid of, after crossing a threshold, the baptism or the Red Sea. These are the patterns that you look at and go, are those really patterns? When you look at enough of them, you go, yeah, they're crossing a threshold somehow and going into some place and having to defeat something, and that is a common motif. Whether you're defeating a city or a hydra. Whether you are going after the golden fleece or to be like a child, 7 days old, these represent getting back to an early self of healing. Now, the monomyth, let's take a look at what Joseph Campbell has identified first. And I'm going to tell you right up front that he doesn't have it completely identified. I'm going to show you some things in here that you would have to say, yeah, that is a part of, that should be a part of it as well. Now, I don't know if he left them out intentionally or if he didn't see them. Honestly, there's more to the material than just the monomyth. In fact, let's look at this. This is the 17 stages of the monomyth that was identified by Joseph Campbell. When he wrote his book, he said, this is what I see across the board. There's a call to adventure. Whoever this person is a certain person that's being called. They're singled out. There's a refusal of the call. That's not always there, but there often is. What there really is a struggle to leave the past. So you could have a refusal of the call where one would be like Moses when God is calling him on Mount Horeb. it is time for you to lead my people. And he's like, no, not me. I don't even speak right. So there was a call and then a refusal of the call. However, there is not that's not always the case. If you go read the Jesus monomyth, there's no point in time where Jesus is like, nah, I don't want to go do it. Jason and the Argonauts in the voyage of the Argo, when it's time to go, Jason goes. Greek myth, there's no refusal there. So that refusal is not always there, but they're always, you can have that there, but there should be something that is a struggle to leave the past. If you were to do that voyage of the Argo, and I use that one, you can just, there's YouTube videos that you can, look at those, view those. And, they've stayed true to things. There's a couple of different versions, honestly, that came from antiquities, kind of like the Jesus one. It's like there's a couple of different authors that have made some variations in here. So that each one of them, they're true to the template, but they sound different from each other. One of them is a struggle to leave the island of the old gods. Another one is a struggle to leave the island of the women, the Amazons. Depending on a version again. Both of them, however, represent the idea that it's a struggle to leave the past. These inner qualities, there's something in the past you've got to sail off from. You've got to leave that behind. The island of the old god one, sailing off from that, you interpret that as this is the island of my early self, and it's gods because they were powerful. If you were to go to the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth right off the bat, gods are created, they become raucous and needs to be destroyed. You need to leave those behind. You're going to destroy those gods, or in this case, leaving the island of the old gods behind. What's happening is this idea of leaving your past powerful self. I got to move on. I thought I was shit. I sure am. Time to grow up, humble myself, and defeat that powerful early self. And that's a struggle to leave the past behind. Hercules finally tells him, come on, we got to get going, makes him get underway. And then they go to Phineas, and his food is being defiled daily. There's the cyclical pain. Then they go through the clashing rocks with the help of Hera, barely making it through. They're crossing the threshold. If you looked at the Exodus story, you would see the same thing, but it's conceptual. Pharaoh's telling him, you can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. There's our struggle to leave the past. Instead of having a hard time leaving the island, Pharaoh represents our early self, our early life experiences. It's hard to leave that. Where are you? I'm stuck here. Sometimes you might be like, you know what? I got to get out of here. But if I do, I don't have food. I don't have a roof over my head. It's a struggle. Okay, this is a big freaking deal. And then there's cyclical pain, too. It wasn't the food being defiled from the harpies. What is it instead? It's plagues coming in routinely. So there's the cyclical pain that's happening. There's something that is happening over and over again. Then with God's help, you go through the Red Sea, barely making it through. Those are the common elements right there that scream monomyth. This is the template right there in full visual. No, you have to see it in your mind. People can't see that. They can't understand that conceptual idea, but it's there. I believe it is possible to kind of academically see the stages along the way, but to really interact with the material takes something different. You have to be able to take that entire story, no matter what it is, and play it out in the theater of your mind. Every piece and part of that story goes up here. All of the elements, all of the people, all of the adventures represent something in a big way, something about our life. If you can't do that, you don't find the mono template. It's just invisible to you. Okay, what I want to do at this point then is to talk about the monomyth a little bit more than to describe exactly what it is. There's a human life sequence that we live through. When you're born, you're kind of in a pure state. This is not part of the template. This is something that he did not identify. This is everything that leads up to the monomyth. I'm going to tell you about that very quickly. Just look at your own life and realize when you're a little kid, hopefully, some people come up in bad homes, but presumably you come as a kid, you're a happy little kid that plays and you know a few basic things. Then you go off and start experiencing life. And when we do, we begin to lose our happiness. Life goes bad for us. We live through our judgments. Eventually we get to a point where we can be so mentally frazzled. And if we're the right kind of a person, there's a calling. Not everybody's going to do this. There's also going to be a pretty significant filtration process that very few people are going to do this. Many called, few chosen. Many stand outside the narrow gate. The narrow gate is the mind. Many people are going to hang on to this material and never really look into it. Many carry the ark, few see inside. Those are all metaphorical teachings that are telling us this The story's got magic in it. You got to understand how to put yourself into it. It's a path for you. Okay, so life goes bad. If we were going through Genesis, that's all the way up to where it's time. The world has gone bad. Our inner selves, the beautiful daughters of men, our inner qualities have been completely corrupted, and it's time now to destroy things. At that point is when God returns. If you remember in Genesis, God disappeared right after Cain and Abel and doesn't return again until later. This represents the idea that we start out living through our higher awareness. We gradually shift to living through our memories. And then we live continuously through our memories unless or until the time we go, oh, I'm living through my memories and I don't like it. I'm going to resolve that and improve my life. That is when the monomyth begins. This is a mental path. All of the teachings are mental, inner. We're a product of our thinking, of our experiences, and our hurt. And if you want to heal and to feel good, we have to resolve these things. All of them are that way. Those are primary beginnings that have to be interpreted. What I want to do is real quickly just identify that is indeed the case. If we went to Buddha and the Dhammapada, the very first verse, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. Here's a cyclical pain. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. I am the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. That's me, the wheel, evil. That's something that I'm holding that is derogatory. It does not mean that I was evil. It might mean that I was a victim. I'm still holding on to something that is derogatory. That right there is going to continue to follow me as a cyclical thing. Now, if I went to the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu, the very first verse, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The Tao, the way, the pathway, the way that you can talk about is not the eternal path. So what is the eternal path? The eternal path is one that you take yourself. You have to take the path yourself, and the only way to do that is you're interacting with these teachings mentally. So this is obscurely telling us it's a mental path. Buddha said we're a product of our thinking. This is telling us it's a mental process. If we went to Jesus right off the bat from Jesus, we would hear there's a verse that says, "Judge not, lest you be judged, for the judgment with which you judge others will be likewise judged to you," or words to that effect. And if you know what that means in a mental or a spiritual process and not a physical process, then the spiritual process, the only way to interact with that is mentally. So in a case like that, judge not, think not, claim not. This Lao Tzu tells us naming is the origin of all particular things. That means in our life, as we judge something and classify it, that's the beginning of it for us. Judge not, lest you be judged from Jesus is exactly the same thing, but in different verbiage. Do not classify things or you become part of a product of that. And by inference, all of these are mental processes, every one of them. So we have to know when we're operating with this is a mental step. If he's got it sounding weird, we can completely identify it as mentally interactive steps. We don't have to leave it very nebulous as Joseph Campbell did. But just think through that interpretation. If it really is, what is it we're doing here? Something happened to me that I'm holding on to that is incredibly painful and unresolved. It continues to create conditions in my life that I'm done with it. I got to somehow fix this. I got to get rid of it. I have to resolve it. It's a part of my memory. Where is that? It's mental. It's in your mind. And who does it? There's only one person that can do that trip. The only person that can take a walk through your mind to your memories is you. That's it. Then what is it? It's a mental process. There's no other way. That's what the template is. So now what happens? That's the first template. He doesn't have that identified. Cyclical pain is going to happen as a result. Now right here we have the call to adventure. You see, the cyclical pain happens just before the call to adventure. The call to adventure, the cyclical pain is the reason we go on the adventure. We have cyclical pain. And we're going to struggle to leave the past. We're going to struggle to leave it behind. It's going to be hard. The supernatural aid, there isn't anything supernatural. It's knowledge. What we have to do is change the frequency of something. So that sounds magical. And you're like, oh, I need supernatural aid for that. But it's forgiveness. We're changing the frequency of the perception. Something happened to me. Maybe I was a perpetrator. Maybe I was a victim. Whatever it is that I hold on to, that I think of in my mind, that stays in my mind, nobody else knows about it. But when I think about it, I feel shame, I feel anger, I feel hatred, I feel something that it's like, okay, that right there is not happening right now. It's a part of a memory, but you know exactly how the memory is stored, and it's going to continue to act out on the basis of that emotional state. So what you have to do is change the perception until you look at it and go, yeah, the hell with it. I'm going to let it go. I see where I am. I see what happened. I'm out of that flow. I'm going to let go of that, and I don't feel that way anymore. And then you've changed the frequency of it. So then what you need, the supernatural aid is really the understanding that you must go after the memory and that you must change the perception of the memory in order to heal from it. That's it. You got to forgive the ought against your brother in order for your Father to see in secret, to reward you in secret. If you want a better flow in the Tao, you have to unname things. Naming is the origin of all particular things, and caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. That's something from Lao Tzu. They're all teaching the same thing, that we're hanging on to something that we need to let go of. If we don't, we're going to see it over and over again emerge. And you know what? I will continue to pull from everywhere, all over the place. Why? The hero with 1,000 faces. They're all doing the same thing, but in different cryptic verbiage. However, the interpretation process is identical between all of them. They've taken a part of the human life. I must turn inward to my mind. That's a crossing of a threshold. Do anything you want to create some sort of a crossing of a threshold. Typically, it's a water crossing. And then the other barrier creates something that's very difficult. Now we've got the Red Sea. We barely make it. We're being chased. It's this high adventure. It's the clashing rocks. They're coming in. They're getting ready to crash up on us. This high adventure of barely making it through that difficult part, but in both cases, too, needing God's help. That's the higher awareness that we're taking with us. That's how we resolve it. When you realize the higher awareness is who I really am. The memories, if I'm living through them, I'm living through the memories. I'm not living through who I really am. The higher awareness is that, who you really are. So these are all parts of it. Now, the crossing of the first threshold is turning inward to the mind. Belly of the well is being into the mind. There's another threshold that is, do you see there's, let's see, the crossing of the return threshold is over here. There are actually two thresholds up front, and he only has one identified, the crossing of the first threshold. There's a second threshold that is actually this. The first threshold is turning into your mind. We can all do that. And I can tell you all kinds of things that I know and that I remember, and what I did yesterday and stuff like that. It's no problem. But there's an area in my mind that you don't get access to. That is the tough barrier. That's the clashing rocks. That's the Red Sea. That's where the bad nasties are, behind that wall. We can all cross the first threshold. You go watch that first, the old black and white Argonautica, the Jason and the Argonauts movie, and you're going to see Jason cross the river and lose a sandal as he meets up with Pelias. That indicates turning inward and meeting up with your previous self. I am now turning inward and telling my earlier self, that's it. I'm done with you. I'm taking over. I'm tired of giving in. Pelias, you've had it. I've crossed the threshold. However, we have to do a bunch of things now to get prepared to go on the adventure. And the real bad adventure doesn't happen until after we've left the island of the women, the struggle to leave the past, the cyclical pain. We even killed some people accidentally. And mourned and left that behind. That's a weird thing. Where would we see that in Jesus material? How about the killing of a fig tree that wasn't producing fruit? Both of these represent parts of myself that are unnecessary. They may not be bad, they might not be hurting me, but they're unnecessary. I've got something emerging from within my garden that's not doing anything for me. It's not feeding me. I'm dragging it along. It's actually just taking me down. It's sucking the life out of me. I need to let that go. So those are parts of it too that I hadn't even mentioned. Those are parts of leaving the past. Then when we finally do go through the clashing rocks, boom, the adventure begins. So the parallel stories are there, but the second threshold, then that difficult one, that's the one where you go, okay, this is where the molestation is. This is where the rape is. This is where I did this or I did that and I feel this way and I can't let it out. It's so shameful. I don't want it out. That's the stuff that's going to destroy you. You got to get that out. And not many people are going to do it. That's why the calling is so few and the refusal is there. But look at the cyclical pain. Put yourself in this story. It's a template of a human life. A part of the isolation process is I'm going to tell you that there's going to be personality is going to be a part of this. I don't care what anybody says. This is not for everybody. And if you do this and get into it, you begin to realize there's a certain kind of brain that does this. And parts of that brain has an expansive awareness. But there's another part of it is that this brain feels guilt. There are many people who do not feel guilt, or they can just manage it fine, or they don't manage it, they act it out, but they would rather carry it and act it out than to deal with it. We would like to unburden ourselves from it. Instead of carrying it and acting it out, we want to unburden ourselves. That's another part of the isolation. It's people with high levels of capacity to feel shame. That doesn't mean that you've done things that are shameful. It means that you feel shame over things that somebody else might go, who even cares? Meanwhile, it makes you feel bad. You got high sensitivity. So that second threshold is crossed, the meeting up with the goddess. That's meeting up with the inner self. I have an inner being. I love my inner self. However, stuff keeps coming out and I feel turmoil. That's my inner self. It's my memories. It's my bundle of memories that I have decided upon. But it is when I'm not consciously living life, looking at things and making decisions, I'm sitting there. That's what the turmoil is. That's where I'm coming from. That right there has become a part of me. That's what we need to resolve. That's the ought against our brother that we need to get rid of so we're not living through it anymore. That's the mote in the eye. And the examples I'm using right there are verse type. They're not monomyth type. Honestly, it would be like spending 40 years in the desert at a devoid place until the healing has taken place. It might be defeating the seven-headed Hydra in order to get the golden fleece. You're defeating something that is in the way in order for you to get to a beginning point. The golden fleece he's going after is at the far side of the earth. That's the far side of my earth. This is me. I'm starting to turn inward. If I go to the far side of the earth and I'm starting at my age going backwards, where is that? That's the beginning of time. That's where that child 7 years old is. We're defeating what is in the way of getting back to that. That means we're just healing ourselves and becoming happy again and not living through those memories. That's what those things are. They're memories that we're living through. When we resolve them, we no longer live through them and we get back to a happy state. It's that simple. This looks complicated. The stories are big. That was their media. It was much more than that. But our lives, we cannot fathom the amount of time they had. The free time. We cannot fathom it. I don't know how meaningful these would be at this point, but let me go ahead and put them up. These are some comparisons that a few quick ones that I put up. Things that we should be familiar with. Right here I have Jesus is called as the Son of God, has supernatural powers, travels with hand-picked disciples, and seeks the kingdom of heaven within. Jason from Greek myth, the Voyage of the Argo. Jason is called as the rightful ruler, has Hera for supernatural powers, travels with the Argonauts, and seeks the golden fleece. King Arthur is called as the only one who could get Excalibur, had Merlin for supernatural powers, travels with hand-picked knights, and seeks the Holy Grail. The template was used for the first Star Wars trilogy. Luke is called as the son of Vader, has the Force for supernatural powers, travels with special selected rebels, and seeks to save the Alliance and destroy the Death Star. Notice that they all feature a doubter or problem in the midst of travelers. Judas, Lancelot, C-3PO, I forget the name of the spy on the Argo. It was Pelias' son who was along the kind of, yeah. What all of these do is they represent our doubts. If you think of what all of these things are that represent, all of these play out in the mind, all of those qualities, the disciples, the knights, the whatever, they all represent something different. If you look at them, this one is, justice, this one's balance, this one's fairness, this one's strength. But there's always one in there that's doubtful. It's, I have fears too. That's what that represents. I have all of these qualities that I'm taking with me on the adventure, but you know what? Fears are going to be right there along with it as well. So that's what that represents right there. And let's see. Okay, there's one, I want to talk about this one just because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. It's become so big lately and people throw it at me so matter of fact it's very arrogant. People have become convinced that Jesus, from the age of 12 to the age of 30, have gone to India to learn Tibet, things like that, learn magical powers from mystics, gurus, and things like that. There's entire channels, people's lives, books dedicated to that. It's all, boy, it's Graham Hancock, foil hat, Gaia channel stuff right there. I'll tell you straight up. Jesus is a monomyth character. The age of 12, he was at the temple. He disappeared. At the age of 30 is when he started his ministry. And people are like, well, Jesus is real. Where did he go for that time frame? Then so they invent something. All right, they're not understanding what a monomyth is. Jesus is saved out as a kid and starts as a young man. Remember, he was saved out and they went to Egypt to save him. And he disappears for a while, but then he comes back. There's the temple there. He just falls off the face of the earth until it's time to go on the ministry. And the book of Luke tells us about 30. Jesus is saved out as a kid and starts out as a young man, yeah. Okay, Jason, same thing. That happened with Jason in the Greek story. He was saved out as a kid and was sent off. And when the adventure starts, that's when he arrives. Jason is now here. It tells about the past, but bingo, it's time to start the adventure. Moses, same thing. He's in the basket. He's saved out as a kid and starts out but doesn't start his ministry or the thing until after the calling up on the mountain. So each one of them disappears, or in the case of Moses, no, he was visible out there in Egypt, but coexisting with the earlier self. Actually, what you're seeing with the Argo story is just a straight up monomyth. What you're seeing in the Exodus story is something in the beginning that is not identified as part of the monomyth, and that's the human life cycle. Moses being isolated out represents any individual that is being isolated out at birth. And then the life goes all the way through. When the calling happens on Mount Horeb is when the actual monomyth starts. So the monomyth itself is there, but it also contains a human life template all the way. The only thing not there is creation. Creation already happened in Genesis, but right there in the beginning is the human life cycle. Moses as an infant is us being born. And then being saved out means you're isolated. And I want to contend that the isolation is there, but that the isolation is brain type, but there's going to be other things. Just because you have the right brain type doesn't mean you're going to go on the adventure. You have to have other conditions as well. This is going to be very few people are going to find this path and take this path. However, people are doing this on a regular basis. If you step back and look at this, what you will understand is this is psychology. This is self-psychology. This is like saying, I have something that's bothering me. I need to go address it. Or I have something that's bothering me. I'm going to go see somebody and talk to them and talk it out until it's resolved. You're either doing it with somebody or you're doing it yourself. That's what this is. However, this is very important to state. We are in a flow. We're in a collective. It's not just a matter of feeling better. Your life will work better. Okay, when the DVD The Secret says just forget about that stuff and visualize what you want, that is completely backwards from what the masters from antiquity were telling us. To resolve that stuff and the flow is automatic. What you want just happens. It unfolds. You don't have to sit there in the midst of failure wanting something else. What you do is you reduce the failure and you begin to flow right automatically into things. So instead of, that's just called so what, we're going to defer to Jesus and say, that's the odd against your brother. That's the mote in your eye. Get rid of it. And guess what happens? Life automatically works better. So it's not just a matter of healing yourself. It's a matter of healing yourself and knowing that there is a flow, a collective flow, that life unfolds in a completely different way when our emotions are in a different state of collection. The mass of emotions and memories is what we're living through, and we're going to flow through. And as long as they're painful, we're going to keep experiencing it. Resolving this resolves that. You want to fix the future. We're living in the residual of this. You can't fix now without resolving something that you're dragging with you, which then resolves the future. Okay, so this is a common motif for people that think Jesus went and studied somewhere else at that point in time. I'm going to just tell you that's really basket case thinking. I can appreciate what you're doing and what you want to do and what you want to believe, but if you step back and look at it, you're going to find out that you're focused in on one period of time and one place in history, and you don't understand the commonality of the material you're working with. If you're treating that like it's true, you're not seeing the global commonality. You're focused in one area that is the carrier, not understanding the template. You're not following Jesus. You're inventing a path. Okay, in the interest of getting this video closed up, what I want to say is that is there, that this is in plain language here. What I've done is I've gone through and made some, these are the points that we're looking for. However, step down here to 17, that's where the calling is. That's where Joseph Campbell's template picks up. So all of this stuff happening up front, he did not identify. We are born and emerge from and in a higher energy source. We can have our mentality from there at some point in time. That's going to be our higher awareness, plus everything that we have in life comes from there. We're going to live through cause and effect. Everything in our life will continually cycle. All energy moves in waves, which is cycles, plus time. Yeah, something just goes over and over again and up and down, but then you put time across it, turns into a wave. So anyway, everything works that way. So our life experiences are also going to be bound in cycles. Look at it. You see stuff happening over and over again, okay? That's going to be cause and effect. We need to understand that. If something is happening that sucks, stop and look and go, is this continually happening? Can I get out of it? Yeah, we're in cycles. All right. We're going to live in a 5-part process, and this becomes a mental story hierarchy. In the Jewish Abrahamic version, the higher awareness equals God. The consciousness is the called hero. The subconscious is the wife. Could be goddess in Greek myth. That's what Joseph Campbell identified. It's the inner being. We want to be married to our inner self, which means we don't have inner conflict and turmoil. Then we have the quality of the emotional state of the memories. Those be offsprings, animals somehow in the story. Here's a good place to see it hidden in the story. This starts off right in the beginning with the very first, the chapter 12 beginning of a monomyth. It's the second monomyth in Genesis is when Abram and Sarai are called. That represents us in life. What happens? God puts them in a place where there's a famine. It's like you start off in life where there is nothing. It's like God being in, or putting them in Eden where there's nothing and then telling them don't eat anything, but they do anyway. And what happens here is that God puts them someplace where there's no food, there's a famine, so they have to leave. They go to Egypt. Pharaoh marries Sarai and gives Abram a bunch of slaves, animals, men and servants, things like that. But then finds out that Sarai is really his wife, not his sister, and he tells them to get out, everything leave. This represents our life and that we have accumulated things that are not good along the way. You now have animals and manservants as a result of giving up your inner self and finding the corruption that took place right there. And then the past told you, get lost. You see those elements right there. There's 2 other things that happened right in this story that I didn't even mention. Number 1, God puts them there and then God disappears. So there it is, like right after Cain and Abel, God disappears. God doesn't come back until the calling of Abraham. But right now God is gone. But what happens? Plagues happen instead. The cyclical pain element is there. It's time to move on. And that's what you're getting as a result. So those manservants and things that were picked up along the way in life's experience are going to represent bad things. You don't want stuff. You want to be empty, not full. But not only do we have a subconscious, but now we have the subconscious full of things. What are the memories? What are the state of those? And then the last one, finally, we have the resultant flow of life as a result of the alignment of the first 4. That's going to equal the general quality and ease or difficulty of life as it flows naturally for you. How's your life? It's going to be due to these 4 things up here. This one's thick and hard to find. It's in the second creation story, the 5 rivers from Eden. One flows out. There's 4 that go different directions. We got 4 things, and then one of them from Eden out. There's your flow of life. That's the flow of life based on the other 4. Number 5 is going to be a result of the 4 of these working together or not. All right, we come with certain fixed qualities. We know that. Our brain types, preferences, things like that. Some people like to be, some people are engineers, some people like to adventure. There's just different brain types. We're born with those qualities. Those are not choices later on. We do what we tend to want to. We start to become self-aware within a few years. Now, be careful with this one. People are like, we're self-aware right off the beginning. I'm not talking about life. I'm talking about what can you remember in your life. When you look back, when did you start having enough memories and enough cognition to be self-aware? At first, we are not self-aware. We're alive. We're doing stuff. 2, 3-year-old kids are playing and having fun. They're not going to remember that later. We're still developing memories at an early stage, okay? Down there at that stage, we're naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden, little kids. We haven't learned the pain of life yet. Okay, so we start to become self-aware in a few years. We start life blissfully in ignorance. We begin to judge life. Look at that step right there, 7 to 8. It went from 7, naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden, to first sin. We begin to judge life. We lose our childhood bliss out of the Garden of Eden. Cyclical pain begins as a result. Pain in childbirth. Inner self is a product of conscious judgment. The wife is subservient to the husband. We live our first life unaware that we are emotionally judging experiences and becoming an energy bundle of the quality of those judgments. That's Adam destined to work the land and suffer. Does that sound familiar? We live our first life unaware that we are emotionally judging life experiences and becoming an energy bundle of the quality of those judgments. This should sound like Jesus. Judge not, lest you be judged. For the manner in which you judge others will be judged back to you. Yeah, this is it right here. We're becoming a bundle of those judgments. We divide and become our first self, our memory self. That's where Cain killed Abel. Then we lose the connection with our detached higher awareness. This exists outside the memory experiences. This is where God leaves the story here. This shows us that God is the higher awareness, as that is what is happening here in life. I do want to say right here that a lot of people probably are like very close to this, but don't quite have a handle on it. When you're hearing things like, if people, I've never heard Buddha consciousness. I think once in a while, perhaps. That's something really weird. Christ consciousness, things like that. People talk about that, and you would ask them, because I think to myself, I know what they're talking about. I wonder if they know what they're talking about. It really is a higher awareness. If you call it a Christ consciousness that you're living through, it's so baggage prone. I don't like it. And it makes it Christian, and it's not. The higher awareness is something that existed before any religion was ever developed. Don't give it a religious name. Call it what it is. It's bigger than any religion. Okay, time goes by in life for many years, and we get worse. This is where the lineage and tent making, things like that are all happening. We're going to get on to chapter 6 in Genesis, where the world is corrupt. It's my world experience that is corrupt. Most people remain right there in life. It's a human life template. This is all stuff that happens before the monomyth even begins. At long last, we are ready to face ourselves. The calling ensues. We reconnect with our higher awareness. This is each person's own choice, if ever. It gets rare right here, and this is the start of the monomyth story. There are many of these from antiquity. The Bible itself is full of them. Genesis, Exodus, Joshua, Ezekiel, the 4 Gospels, and more. God returns at this stage. You will always see at these, so-and-so is called by God, and it's time to get addressed by God and get some sort of a bundle or words in your mouth or a scroll to eat or something like that. The supernatural aid is going to be part of the story. They're going to have to cross a river right off the bat. All right, it's going to be a struggle to leave the past or deal with the past in order to leave it behind. There may be a refusal, which is based in fear of taking the journey. We simply struggle facing our hurt stuff. We need the right kind of help. And we need to know how to fully connect with the higher awareness as well as how to change the state of the memory. That would be held in the supernatural aid. You're getting information, knowledge on what to do to defeat this creature inside of you, the monster. What is it? It's a memory. We turn inward and face the self that we wish to defeat. It's crossing the threshold. We observe and begin to use mental thinking processes that will first ease, then completely free us from our past judgments so that we can live free of them. We work with them until we heal from it. Our fear over the years and not facing it made it what it is. Hating it, whatever we thought about it and went, we were giving it more strength, not knowing that. Every time we do that, it builds it up more that way. We need to work down from that. That's the ultimate goal. We need to face those things instead of saying, you're a monster that I just hate. We have to look at it and go, oh, you're just something that happened that is not a monster. You're nothing. We got to work it around till we're free of it. Then we return to life with our newfound freedom, and we now have the power to do this as much as we choose to. Life is better. So that's basically what I would pretty much as classify as my own version, my updated and plain language, mentally interactive version of the monomyth. You see the 17 stages of Joseph Campbell's monomyth? Yep, it started down there when it's time to turn inward. He had missed everything else before that. And, crossing the first threshold, that's turning into your mind. Let's just call it what it is. Belly of the whale, that's in the story. That's inside of your mind. Let's just call it what it is. Road of trials. I'm going to struggle with these issues. Let's just call it what it is. Meeting with the goddess. That's the inner self. Temptation. Struggle to move on. Atonement with the Father. That should have happened ahead of time. He's got that wrong. Atonement with the Father needs to happen in the separation. That's how you're healing this stuff and working through it. The road of trials, the meeting of the goddess. The Father is the higher awareness. You don't wait till now to pick up the higher awareness. You pick up the higher awareness before you start. So you can see why it was incumbent upon me to try and modify that and to make it plain language. I think it's going to make it easier to see the monomyth. I'm not going to go into deeper detail on the monomyth on this one because I think that people get swamped with this stuff. What I wanted to do, however, is identify that there is indeed something there that can be looked at, but it's not exactly what we think that it is. If you just call it the Joseph Campbell monomyth, that's not adequate. It's not going to do the job. So hopefully this video then brought you up to where I am with my interpretation. His monomyth is correct, except that it's a mono template that is much bigger, and it's a human life template. It's not just an adventure series. There's something deeper in there at the core level for the person. When it's time to turn inward, you can use a monomyth as a platform. You can say, I become this person. It is now time for me to go face my earlier self, turn inward, to defeat this and that, or, whatever the case may be. You look at it and go, you know what? Mental health has always been a human issue. We're evolving. We're fear-based. And we move towards joy. This is helping us move from fear to joy, to advance from this physical, I've started out life this way, to I can rise above that and live in a better way. The monomyth, if followed, will actually get there. It's an enlightenment path. It's not just an adventure path. It's an adventure path or a religious follow path if you don't interpret it. Those are the carrier shells. The template. All of those stories are made on this template. That's why they're common. But you have to understand the conceptual nature of them and how they play out in the mind, the mental hierarchy, all of that stuff comes into play. So there's a lot of parts to it. Okay, I'll end this video now just to try to wrap it up. Questions, comments, I'd love to hear things. I'm not quite sure how to launch into it next. I think some of the stories get so big that it takes a long time to go through them. It might be better off for me to take a few, like Ezekiel and a few other ones like that, and just show parts of the beginning of them. Here's where the calling is happening. Here is where the crossing is happening. Something like that. Instead of going through the whole big thing, which would take forever in a video, just show some high points of here's how they compare. Look at what they're doing right here. Look at what they're doing here. Okay, and that might help people start growing into it a little bit better. But okay, the monomyth is there. We're going to expose it for anybody that can follow. If you can't follow, I don't know why. It's a bizarre thing. I found it, which means I can see it. All right. See you in the next video.